Good morning, everyone. Today is 18 December, the year 2006. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in those conflicts. Today, I'm here at the museum and have the honor and the privilege of interviewing Captain Ted Lennon. Captain Lennon was an officer in the Medical Service Corps serving 12 months in Vietnam. So we're going to talk to him about that and a lot of other things. Ted, nice to have you here.
David, thank you.
You can just put that stuff down there if you want to. Ted, would you state your full name and spell it for us, please?
D-O-R-E, Richard R-I-C-H-A-R-D, Lennon, L-E-N-N-O-N, Jr.
And when and where were you born?
I was born in Santa Monica, California, September 19th, 1942.
And so you got in, well, I was 3 years old when you were born, so you probably don't remember anything about World War II, I don't imagine.
Not a whole lot. I remember visiting my father in the Naval Air Base in Oklahoma. I do remember that a little bit. And so my uncle's coming home from the Army. We all lived at one big house. And so I do have memories of that.
Okay. And what was your father's name?
Same name as mine. That's why I'm a junior.
Okay. And is he still alive?
My father has passed away in 1994.
Okay. And his ancestors, I'm assuming they perhaps came from Ireland? How did they end up in
His
California?
father, the family Lennon name came from Ireland, O'Leanan. And
Yeah, what was it?
O'Leanan.
How would you spell that?
O-L-E-I-N-E-N, I think, was the original derative.
Mm-hmm.
But the current name Lennon goes back about 4 generations into Ireland with the same spelling.
Mm-hmm.
But the derivative was from O'Leanan, I believe.
What part of Ireland were they from? Do you know?
You know, I just got my nephews just did complete research on everybody, so I have a history of that, but I didn't memorize it yet.
And what does the O signify? O, does that mean of a place or a name? Or
You know, I don't know. It's a very good question. It's a common thing in the Irish trade.
Yeah.
No, my father's father came from the Middle East. He was a reporter. He came out and he became the first PR man for Louis Mayer.
Really?
On the West Coast. He died fairly young. My father was about 13. My father was one of 8 children, who all had an average of 9 children apiece. And so we have a number of first cousins and a very big family in Southern California.
I bet you do. And
His mother was a prima ballerina from Germany. Her last name was Heinrich.
Oh.
And I did have a great uncle who was actually a fighter pilot in World War I for the German Army, who came over here to live and became a great patriot. And
oh my gosh. What was his name? Do you recall his name?
Maximilian Heinrich.
And so what did your dad do?
In the service or later on?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, well...
Well, he was in the Navy, and I think he was the captain of the All-Star Navy softball team, so I don't think he was...
You're talking about it during
World
War II.
II.
He was, yeah.
And then my father went on, since we had 13 children, he always maintained about 3 jobs till I got out of college. And at that time, he became Lawrence Welk's business manager and became a really very prominent executive, having to understand the oil business, thoroughbred breeding, music business, major real estate development. And he became very, very successful and had...
So I was wondering, so you sort of had a background in real estate development.
It came late. I saw him as an executive late after I got out of college, and he had a wonderful career.
The Lennon sisters, I think, were part of... How did they fit into...
They're my first cousins. Their dad and my dad were brothers. We grew up about a block apart. I lived with their family about a year when my room burned down at one time, and they used to live at our house. And if you don't remember, their father was murdered by one of their fans when they were probably mostly in their 20s. Right. And so my dad kind of stepped in as their financial advisor and kind of a assistant father for their 11 children they had, also along with taking on our own family.
Wow. And Jimmy Lennon, the ring announcer, I think he...
Well, Jimmy Lennon Sr., the famous fight announcer, I think he was in 21 movies, sang at 400 weddings, untold fights and wrestling matches. He was a true Damon Runyon type character, and he's passed away now. But his son is following his footstep, and I think does most of the Don King HBO work.
Yeah, I think you're right.
His
And
son
he sounds
was,
like his dad.
son was a very shy young man, but ended up getting a degree in mathematics. He's a concert pianist. He's the principal of a private school, and he does the fights and wrestling all over the country at night.
Oh my gosh. And your mother, what was her maiden name or full name?
Her maiden name was White. Her side was more English, Irish, and some Polish, I believe. And she grew up kind of a gypsy existence with my grandfather was an inventor who was brilliant but never stuck with anything. And so they moved back and forth, got the country. He raced in the old motor races. He was a strong man. He could pick up cars. So she led a very gypsy life, and which allowed her to be very free-spirited and just enjoy all the small things in life, very artistic.
What was her first name?
Peggy.
Yeah.
Peggy.
Is she still alive?
No, my mom passed away about 96.
And where did they meet, your mom and dad?
Golly, my parents were always remembered and known as the best dancers, and they met at a dance back when ballroom dancing and, dancing was a thing to do. It was, I guess clubbing now would be something similar.
Yeah.
That's how they met. They're quite young.
And how many brothers and sisters again did you have?
I have 7 brothers and 5 sisters for a total of 13, and I'm the oldest.
And can you name them all?
I can.
Do so, please.
I'm Ted, Tina, Tom, Jack, Jim, Barbara, Virginia, Katie, Tony, Kevin, Michael, Mark, and Liz.
Very good. And where do you fit in there?
I'm the oldest.
Oh, you're the oldest.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And I know Tony. And is he still living in the desert here?
Tony's still out in the desert. He has 3 kids out here, and he's doing great. And he's very successful in real estate sales.
Is he still with Bighorn?
He's still a Bighorn, and he's got a daughter about to get out of high school, and a young son who's a superstar athlete here in town.
Okay. Being the oldest, the eldest, did a lot of burden come up on you to help take care of the family of the younger kids and things? Would you guess?
I think I was babysitting 5 or 6 kids when I was about 7, and continuously then on, and then younger siblings kind of took over that job. So, and then my dad had 3 jobs. I used to work one with him at night or delivering papers, and then when he worked the graveyard shift, my mom would make me stay up because she was kind of scared, so I'd have to stay up to midnight, 1 in the morning. And I was pretty young, and so I was given a lot of responsibility, and I was made to feel responsible, at all times.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember the street that you lived on, or the house that you lived in?
Well, when I was about 7, we moved into a house that my brother still lives in, and I remember it was like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. I think it cost $8,000, and at 2240 Superior Avenue in Venice, California. It's now like 5 or 6 bedrooms been added on to. My youngest brother, who was born there, had acquired it from the estate and continues to live there. He's a professional singer, kind of a rock star in Europe, and has
Really?
made a good living out of singing his whole life.
Oh,
And
yes, yeah. So a lot of singers are artistic type folks in your
very
family,
much so.
huh?
I have some artistic flair and development, but I'm the only one in the family who can't carry a tune. And I think my family is very, very creative.
So that house, eventually, were there 13 of you at home at one time, or
There were.
really?
Yeah.
And so you added on to it as time went by?
Yeah, my folks added on and built a pool, and the garage got converted to a 2-bedroom place, and the back area got converted to a carport, and but my parents always stayed there. When they became very successful, they stayed in the same neighborhood and same community.
Was your family pretty religious? Did they go to church a lot?
Yeah, we were brought up Catholic. I spent a lot of time as an altar boy. Went to Catholic grammar school, Jesuit high school, a couple of years. I went to public high school 2 years. Went to Jesuit college.
Okay, where did you go to grade school then?
I went to St. Mark's Grammar School in Venice, California.
How far was that from your house?
I could run there in about 7 minutes. It was probably a mile or something.
Yeah. And what did your kids do for fun growing up, basically?
I think my all-time favorite was Sandlot football. Just played football from morning to night, and what other baseball, what other sports, and family vacations were water skiing, fishing, A lot of time at the beach, body surfing.
How far from the beach did you live?
We lived about 2 miles from the beach.
And that was Venice Beach? Or
Venice Beach.
That's where you usually went?
Yeah, as a kid, right.
Yeah. And you did body surfing. Did you ever do any of the board
surfing?
Like?
I did a little bit of board surfing in college, and at the time the boards were about 12 feet long, and the old ones I got to work on were waterlogged, and I never seemed to take to it like I did to body surfing, which I competed in later in life and
really?
stuff.
How they have contests, you mean, or something?
Yeah, they're kind of rare, but they have them. You get a skull cap with your number on, and it's the same kind of thing. You catch, try to catch 3 waves within 20 minutes, and they grade you on your best 3 waves of doing rolls and how far you ride and how you start on the wave and all that type of thing.
How old were you when you were doing that?
Not very long ago.
Oh.
I did it about 14 years ago.
Did you really?
In Laguna, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever play 3-on-3 basketball down in Laguna? Outside they had those basketball
Very
courts.
little, but at basketball, I actually learned I was the best at basketball when I was in Vietnam. We built a concrete full court in the middle of the jungle with concrete from the Air Force, and played in combat boots, and used to play for hours and hours at night, in the heat. And I really learned and appreciated the game over there. But when I was younger, I didn't think that was my sport.
Right. Did you have odd jobs growing up?
I always had a job since I was 11, and can't think of many things I didn't do, from ditch digging to running a gardening crew to delivering papers, throwing papers out the back window of a car at night when my dad drove around and getting sick reading the print. I ran a gas station a couple years in college as a drywall carpenter. Worked with steel. Made made bird cages, sold clothes.
What kind of gas station was it?
It was an interesting gas station. It had quite a garage, and the mechanic was the foremost mechanic on Goldwyn Mercedes in Southern California. So there was like 8 in the shop, and at night I'd close up and have to drive around the block before I put them away every night. So that was a great treat.
And you pumped gas too?
Oh yeah.
What brand?
I was like night man. It was a Richfield station.
Atlantic Richfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they still around?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Where was that station?
That was in Santa Monica on Pico and Sepulveda or something like that.
Yeah. Are all your brothers and sisters still alive?
They all are.
That's good. And where'd you go to junior high?
Went to Catholic grammar school through the 8th grade.
The 8th grade,
and then I got a scholarship to Loyola High School in downtown LA. It's a kind of a top Jesuit prep school. And at the end of my sophomore year there, I came home. My friends we lived in a fairly poor area, and they all went to Venice High and wanted to know I couldn't go to school with them. And so I mentioned that to my dad, and he told me I was old enough to make up my own mind. So my friends heard that, and I'd changed schools. I had no planning on it, but it turned out to be a wonderful contrast of going to an all-boys school of 200 people in a class to a school of 3,400, over 1,100 in a class, and you go from conversations, well, where are you going to college, to what are you going to do after school? You go in the Army, military, you're going to go open a gas station, you're going to get a job, and it was a different world. Yeah. But the smartest kids at the big public school were smarter, I thought, than the top ones at this all prep school.
Really?
You just get that many people and stuff.
So did you play football in high school then?
I did.
Loyola had some pretty good teams.
When I was a freshman, our varsity didn't win a game, and but I was on the freshman team. We were undefeated. It was actually a C team. I was pretty small in high school, and so we didn't have the seniors on the C team. We had one of the state track champions, and he would get a touchdown about 2 out of 3 times he touched the ball when he weighed about 129 pounds. He was a rocket ship. It was a great experience. Yeah. And then I played at Venice High.
What kind of teams did you have at Venice?
When I was a senior, I came in, transferred in there as a junior, and didn't play as a junior, and then as a senior I went out for the team, and they were pretty loaded. But I ended up being the starting cornerback and the quarterback of the team. We went 8-2. It would have went to city playoffs, but we won the last game 62-0. but the one of our defensive ends had moved out of the district and didn't report it 2 weeks before, so we lost it and got out of city, and that was kind of my last organized tackle football. Played in the Army and stuff, but no.
Right. Yeah. Did you run T formation? I suppose you ran T.
Yeah, it was yeah.
Kind of a tight.
Three backs.
Yeah.
Quarterback under center.
Right. Did you throw much?
Short. Yeah, we threw short. We had a big team. We averaged 210 pounds apiece with me on it, and I weighed 138. And so it was a pretty big, good group of guys.
Remember the first car that you had or that you drove?
Well, I didn't have my own first car till I was about 20, and I remember being in a car club in high school that had, I think there were 32 of us, and one guy owned a car, and I remember it was a candy apple red '53 Chevy convertible or something, and we all had car plaques, so we all had these great jackets, and you'd beg and borrow to get one of your parents' cars, and you'd have a plaque holder in the back, and your car plaque would go up, and like my mom had a '55 Chevy, and you took the emblems out inside the chrome, front and back, took the air cleaner off the car, and then you were ready to go, and you had to put that all back together before you put the car away that night. But I had great times in high school. I had great friends, and
you know that movie that Ron Howard was in,
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti. Is that similar to what you guys would do?
Sure. Well, that was an area we grew up. It was the few guys that had cars that used to go race cars, and you'd go down to Hollywood to Dolores' Drive-In and your Letterman's Jacket and stuff, and meet people, and it seemed like it was really clean time. The Catholic prep school I went, there was more fighting there. You go fight other boys' schools after the football game, but it seemed like nobody got hurt, and it seemed all innocent enough. And but yeah, I had a great high school.
Did you have a girlfriend in high school?
I did. I had a few girlfriends.
Anybody special?
Boy, can we edit this thing? No, I did. I had some. I thought they were all very special, and I think I treated them special, and to the point of being naive. I mean, I felt like I could have been married when I was really young. Just felt like I was mature and responsible. So.
And how about academics? Did you like classes in school?
Well, when you go to the prep school, you take Greek, Latin, and everybody takes the top courses and stuff, and it was it was very hard to get into school. At the public school, it was like, you want wood shop, you want time off, what do you want to take? And I took college prep, and what was your question again?
Well, did you have any favorite classes or favorite teachers, for that matter, that you can recall?
Yeah, we had a great physics teacher who had a home up in Bel Air. That was with an observatory in his roof, and he was a kind of a genius teacher and inspiration. But I always liked mathematics mostly, and stuff that took kind of common sense, and mathematics was probably my best subject.
So what year did you graduate?
1960 from high school.
And so what did you do then?
I actually got accepted to Annapolis, and I had a girlfriend who decided I couldn't leave her, so I went to a junior college for a year. Actually played on a volleyball team that won the national championship of college.
What college was that?
San Mike City College. And then I went to Loyola University, where I majored in civil engineering and right in Los Angeles.
Yeah. What position did you play on the volleyball team? Were you a setter or a spiker or what?
Well, as a freshman, I was a setter, and I used to play what they called a 4-2 then, where they didn't mix it all up. It kind of changed later when I played for the All-Army team many years later. But I was the captain of the team, and when I went to Loyola and started it, and I played setter and I was a hitter too. We took a third, I think a fifth in the nation.
Really? Yeah.
After that.
So at Loyola, the college. Okay, so did you graduate before you went into the service?
Yes, I graduated in 1965.
Okay.
And I actually worked 2 years as a civil engineer for the LA Bureau of Engineering, mostly designing large storm drain projects. And Vietnam War was happening, and I actually had a job deferment from the service. But I had two younger brothers get drafted, and one got sent to Vietnam, so I felt a little guilty about that, and didn't think I was cut out to be the kind of engineer I was doing, and so I joined the Army.
Okay. And where did you go for your basic?
I didn't have to go. I went right to officers training. I was brought into this medical service corps, which was rather new. So I was sent to Fort Sam Houston for medic training and officer training. And I spent like 5 or 6 months at Fort Sam Houston in Texas.
Did you have a choice or to go into that particular part of it? Or
I did a little bit of research, and I don't remember how I learned anything or found out, but found out that there was a new corps kind of just been established, and they were looking for people with backgrounds like myself. Civil environmental engineer that could do water reconnaissance, treat water. You know, water's such a huge problem in Vietnam and stuff. Mm-hmm. And would understand medical preventive medicine and all the stuff that most things relate back to water. And so it was the right place, the right time. I think I was a first lieutenant and 5 months after joining, and I was a captain and 7 months after joining up. And after Fort Sam Houston, I went to, I got sent to Fort Bliss, where basic training in Juarez. And in charge of fort preventive medicine and training and kind of water treatment plant stuff. But then I got 2 other side jobs. One was I was in charge of venereal disease for the fort, which is huge because they had a great mentality. They would put these basic trainees through 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever their training was, and then they give them 2 days off when they go to Juarez. 20% of them would catch a disease and not know it, and they'd ship them around the world or home to their families, and it was just terrible. So we tried to do something about it, and the best we did was we taught the doctors more as we'd vaccinate. We'd go over there with big groups and vaccinate the gals and made a major effort. But it was one of those things that shouldn't have happened in the service, but because of political relationship to the city and the money the GIs spent over there and the relationship, it was a tough deal. And I was administrative officer for nuclear biological warfare in that part of the country. So I get calls if there was like a nuke going through town or some germ warfare was going through town on a train or something. They'd alert my group, and did that again in the 3rd year of my service when I was back in San Francisco. And then so I was a captain, and I was married, living on the base.
Okay. Well, let's back up then. When did you get married?
I was married in 1967, right after I quit my job as an engineer before I went in the service.
And what was her name, her maiden name?
Her name was Marilyn Gaston.
And where did you meet her?
I met her at Manhattan Beach.
And did you have children?
We had a son, Tyler,
right,
who's currently 34 years old, and he's an international missionary.
Really?
Runs his own entity, and travels all over the world. Takes people on their vacations or time off to third world countries. Introduces them to hard work and positive work, whether it's orphanages or hospitals or schools. And then he introduces them to the culture, and maybe if they're in Africa, they get to go on a one-day inexpensive safari. And he sends them back to the United States, and his whole goal is to make them better people and send them back changed. And he's successfully done that for about 13 years now.
That's good.
And has been all over the world.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're married, and you've been in the service for 3 years. You're in San Francisco now? Is that where we were?
No, I was got married, went to Fort Bliss, and then thing came along that I was selected to the All-Army volleyball team during an Olympic year, and but the colonel at the base didn't think a captain in the Army ought to be playing volleyball, and they spent a lot of training. So so he brought me back from the training in Chicago. So I kept going back and forth, and meantime I'm newlywed, and my wife doesn't know what's going to happen. And next thing I know, they put me on a plane to Fort Bragg for jungle training, and they told me they were in a huge rush to get me over to Vietnam. There was such a huge rush that they flew me to Tacoma, Washington, and put me on a boat for 28 days at sea. And my insignia looks like I'm a doctor, and there were already 4 doctors on the boat as a troop transport. Mm-hmm. So they had no need for me. I really had no need, and so had a volleyball court on deck, a weightlifting area, and a track, and they served 4 or 5 meals a day. A little Filipino would play the chimes, and we go down and eat meals. And so I beefed up and muscled up and taught volleyball and hit 30 volleyballs over the side of the ship, and got to Vietnam and lost 30 pounds real fast. And
Where did you go into Vietnam? Where did you?
came in I believe it was Quin Yon. It was Cameron or Quin Yon we came into. I can't remember originally, but basically ended up in the Central Highlands with the 173rd Airborne Brigade. So kind of at the base of the coastal land, just as you started up the mountains.
Yeah.
And then we spent half of our compound was Vietnamese soldiers, and the other half were U.S. Mostly the 173rd Airborne Brigade, which is a very radical group. They had the highest percentage of guys in the Long Binh jail for life sentences. There was a lot of turmoil and.
Now, did they jump out of helicopters? Is it basically, or is that what
Yeah,
they
mostly
kinda did?
helicopters. Yeah. They were all airborne
But
guys
they were
too.
airborne,
But there
right?
wasn't much of that.
Parachute.
There wasn't a whole lot of that went on over
No,
there.
I didn't think so. Yeah.
But it was a lot of helicopter, and then where we were like MASH on TV, only downscaled from that. We didn't do any surgery, so we were a battalion aid station, and our job was just to stop the bleeding, build up the blood pressure, so they could make a 30-minute flight to an airport. But we delivered babies, we amputated legs as needed. We did everything at the first level. So I lived with 3 physicians, all younger than me. I was like 24 then, or 23, and they were all younger, right out of med school. And a couple of dentists, who were the superstars when there was an emergency. And I had 20 college graduates under me, who were entomologists and did all kinds of stuff. And another captain was under me just because I'd been in a month longer than him. He was a great guy. And I was in charge of I-Corps for all the water reconnaissance and treatment, which is the upper northern part of Vietnam. And I had a major who was my direct overthing. I think I saw him once. He was he didn't like coming out to the real world, so he stayed back in his hooch. So I was able to travel whenever I want or do whatever I want, and all the medic pilots were my friends, and you got to see a lot of the country, and on a day off we did everything from skin diving and in the bay out of Quin Yon, where we'd keep a sniper on our boat to watch the shores for their snipers and get lobster and fish, and got 1 week off, got to go to Vung Tau to go water skiing, and that was a little resort town where the Viet Cong and us both went to vacation. It was kind of a hands-off deal.
Oh.
And was in charge of an air lease again, helped build a thing called Sin City, which is a big compound that was controlled prostitution as a way of trying to control the thing. And then I was very active. There was this guy was a black beret airborne veterinarian, big raw-boned cowboy out of Utah, and he just wanted to be a Green Beret, but they wouldn't let him out. And he ended up coming up with a concept where to check urine for chloroquine primacin, so that we had our pills to get away from, but guys they wanted to get malaria, or they just didn't want to take the pills, so they gave him a side ache. So he came up with a test so he could go jump out of helicopters with me, that we would drop in on field trips out in the middle of nowhere, and they'd make their leaders take urine tests of everybody, and they take them back to the lab. And we think that we cut malaria in half of what it was before, just by getting guys to take their pills, because of the disciplinary actions if they didn't. So he kind of had a neat thing. He did that, and we helped him do that. And and you get, when you're probably the most interesting thing about it, I think, if you go over there with your head on your shoulders for that war, you came back with your head on your shoulders, unless you got maimed or something. But you do lose friends that you have beer with somebody one night, and the next night you're helping take a leg off or something. But I think my theory is, you go over a good guy, you come back a better guy, because you have a better appreciation for life. You go over a little screwed up, you really got screwed up over there. I mean, the wheat fields of Iowa, they have the marijuana fields. They were just everywhere. They were huge amounts, and drugs, pills, everything was available to all these kids. And so it was a lot of parallels to this war, I think. Although they didn't have I don't think this war they have much interrelationship with the people like these people did. They literally adopt families and kids, and I just don't think I don't think they're allowed to mix as much in Iraq, as far as I can tell.
Probably not, or the Iraqis wouldn't.
Yeah, they don't go to restaurants. They don't go to. It's a different.
It's a whole different culture.
Yeah, it's a very different thing. It's a tough one. It's a real tough one.
Yeah.
So I didn't, and then they kept telling me they're going to bring me back to play for the Army volleyball team and to keep my suitcase packed, and that never happened. And then you know, I had this other friend in the Green Beret, so he talked me into maybe spending at least, you know, when you're, you know, if you play sports and you're competitive, you know, it's hard to be on the, you watch these kids come in from the fields after 2 months in the fields and their clothes are falling off, and you get kind of guilty. So, you know, I went out on a couple alert patrols where they drop us overnight for 2 or 3 days, and, you know, they don't know what's going to come get you until 3 days later. You do that, a little out of boredom and just to be macho, you know, and then you're out there and you go, what am I doing, you know? Just want to get all my people home alive and stuff. And we did one interesting. There was a plague epidemic in our area, and my group all under me took charge of it, and we went out and dusted all the villages and trapped rats and inoculated thousands of people with hand pump inoculator guns. And we got a nice award from the Vietnamese government and stuff.
Was that killing people dying from that?
Yeah, there was a plague epidemic. There
It
was
was
people
just like the
swelling
bubonic
up, and
yeah.
that happened occasionally, and you know, it's from the fleas from the dead rats, and
Sure, yeah.
you know, rats are killed and die all the time, and the fleas were getting on the people, and you know, we had some effect. I don't know how. It's just so overwhelming.
Did you make any good Vietnamese friends?
Yeah, there were young kids that came. We worked with them. Few Vietnamese soldiers. I slept here, and 30 feet away was the first 155 howitzer, and a whole battalion of them. And the Vietnamese ran them. We'd call in the air coordinates. They'd interpret them. It was pretty disastrous, but you just come right out of your bed when those guys go off. And we got attacked a few times, but I was at LZ English. Bong Song was a little ramshackle town right by there. I think we were 100 miles from Queen Yan. Let me just ramble on.
Tell me, I was wondering about some of those firefights and stuff that you were close to.
Well, most of our we got attacked when we drop in to do those tests sometimes, or just go out to do surveys and stuff. There'd be sniper fire and occasional a few rockets come in and stuff. But right where we camped, you'd see firefights going on in the hills around us with, you know, binoculars, and you'd see a scouter plane, and all of a sudden he'd call in fire, and you watch Puff the Magic Dragon go at night, just unbelievable, or in the daytime. Jets diving and stuff, and I've been out in the spotter plane a couple times during call-ins of attacks. And,
what's Puff the Magic Dragon?
That's with the Gatling guns.
Oh yeah.
They can fly over a football field and put a bullet in every 2 square inches and one pass by, but they're slow. They fly at night, and they have you know, tracer bullets, so you see it. It's like Red Rain.
Mm-hmm.
I had incredible pictures of it, but all my stuff got stolen, and they still use it.
Yeah.
But they cover, like, you get a missile base, and they get attacked, and there's no way to come protect them, so they'd all build bunkers. They could go underground, and this thing would just fly over in one swoop and pretty much wipe out anybody above ground.
Did you have any agents knock down the vegetation and stuff like that, like Agent Orange and stuff like that?
I wasn't aware of that when I was pointed out to me a few times. I would fly all over the country in medic choppers with the guys, and you know, the pockmarked areas is just unbelievable. How much bombing went on everywhere, these huge pockmarks in the ground. And a few areas were pointed out where they tried to clear up an area with this Agent Orange stuff.
You were talking about jumping out of helicopters. What was that like? At what height would you be off the ground when you jumped out, or what?
You know, when you stand up and a helicopter jump out, that adds 5 feet to the jump. It's like going off a diving board. So I probably never jumped more than 8 feet, but with a pack on your back and a rifle, and I remember I hurt my back once, and got stuck somewhere, and some MPs came up to me with 4 Viet Cong suspects and asked me if I'd guard them and take them back to my base. And I said, my back. He says, see you later, and they took off, and you're on a helicopter, and they get the pilots up front, and you and I had a bad back, and I'm sitting back there with these guys, and they're moving around, and the pilot kept saying, tell them you're going to throw them off if they move around or something, you know. And so I finally, and then when I landed at the base, it was dark, and there was nobody there to get the prisoners. So I had to walk about 2 miles with 4 guys. They probably weren't even Viet Cong, but they were suspects. And you know, I arrived at this interrogation place, and everybody's playing volleyball. Didn't want to stop to take these guys off my hands, you know. But anyway, I loved riding in helicopters.
What was the morale like, and where you were?
The 173rd Airborne Brigade was like one of the first entities sent over there. And they were fairly small. They were all airborne. They were a lot of mixed race, a lot of racial, not a lot of racial problems, but they had, when I got there, they had a lot of, like 3% of the guys were at the Longman jail, and that's like life. I mean, that's the worst jail. So the highest percentage for per capita of anybody of having people in jail, whether it was from fragging their sergeants to, village attacks to just total subordination and stuff. They were a pretty ragtag group. They brought in a general, I can't remember his name. He was a small man, but real tough guy. And I'll never forget, he had a pet duck, and the officers had to salute his duck when they came to his cabin. Did I tell you the story? And there was a Colonel Hebert, who was the most, I'm told he was the most decorated man from the Korean War. You probably look him up. He's published a couple of books. He has a doctorate degree in psychology and a black belt karate. About 6'3", 6'4", raw bone guy. He was probably in his early 40s when he came in. They brought him in to take over this really problem, I can't remember if it was a battalion or a brigade, whatever it was. And he had this really ragtag group. They just killed one of their sergeants and run out the second lieutenant. And he took over, and it was just like out of a movie. He was like John Wayne. He carried 45 on his hip. He was the first guy out of the helicopter. He led his men into every fight. He told them all he could beat them all up. He could take any one or two of them on at a time. And I think one guy challenged him, and he worked him over. And he built it into this fighting group. And it was right at the time they were out about starting search and destroy stuff. That was the motto then, search and destroy. Small groups, we're going to go out and be like them. And so he was a natural for that. And I never forget, because he got a little trouble. He was there about a month, and he brought all his sergeants in for dinner, and he fed them duck. And it was there, and the journal got him out of the group. And I know he went on to write one or two books and was on some talk shows, and I don't know what happened to him. I read one of his books. It was very well written. So.
What year was this again that you were over there?
I was there in mostly 68, 69.
Okay. The Tet offensive, that was before you got there?
Before.
Right before, yeah. Did you ever feel like you were going to be overrun? Did you get that when they were attacking you?
No.
Were you on a hill or kind of?
It started hilly country. From the flat coastal lands, it started getting hilly, then it starts to go up into the jungle there. And, but I could see, a mile and a half were pretty high jungle mountains, but we were right there at the base, and it was a pretty big encampment, and this was a pretty, man for man, the muscle power, firepower. This wasn't like a bunch of supply people. This was all pretty much a fighting group. So I think they would have stayed away. I felt though that it got overrun a couple times after I left.
Oh, yeah.
I was told that. Yeah.
The supplies that you had, was they adequate to take care of the casualties and all this kind of stuff? I mean, did you have good?
Yeah, we had. It was the classic. Your favorite show. I like MASH. I think that was on before I went there, but the ingenuity of the human mind is spectacular, and the ability of these young medics. And there were medics in an emergency when the howitzers went off at night. You knew they blew up some friendly village or something. And the stretchers usually came in with women and children and old people, and not just one on a stretcher. It's like 2 and 3. So we built those big storage containers. You dug out. We built containers, so they were pretty rocket-proof almost, underground. And then you get people that can wheel and deal and trade with the Air Force for a Jeep they got from the Army and stuff. And we had this Dennis I need to look him up sometime, but he was like the greatest wheeler dealer businessman. He was like the Donald Trump of the Dennis industry, and he traded for. He had a dental. I think I told you I had dental work that's still there from when I was 19 years old. This guy did, and we had a tiled floor. We had marble tiled floor and a bunker down below. He had the latest equipment. He'd get it shipped in. He'd get right people in the United States. He traded. We had generals come in from the Air Force, get their teeth worked done, and we're out in the boonies. And he had this underground, air conditioned. He had generators. He was the greatest. He traded. He got us the basketball court, and he and this other. There was another dentist from Chicago. Was a Polish kid who grew up in the black neighborhoods, a real tough Polish family. And when there was when we got called into the hospital for all the emergencies and stuff, he was he could handle 5 people when the surgeons, and they just wanted one at a time. They wanted a medic at their right arm. He was like a hero.
Yeah.
But and I remember a 19-year-old kid was as good as any physician for doing all that kind of stuff. And
So
so those are the.
did you
memory-
help out with?
Yeah, I was a medic, so
I mean, so you
did cut downs, start IVs, whatever, hold people down.
so you had quite a few of the Vietnamese casualties come in as well as Americans.
Mostly, that was mostly
That
what
was
we
mostly
had.
what you got.
Yeah, it really was mostly that.
Was it kind of like it was hard to tell who's the good guys, who's the bad guys if we're,
Could be a little girl with a bomb. It was.
no, I know that, but I
Yeah.
mean, if you went out into the countryside, and you talked to a Viet, could he just as likely be a Viet Cong or as opposed to
Generally, yeah. It was if they were a young man between the ages of 16 and 35, one side or the other would have snatched them out of the field. So you had less trust in one of those. They just didn't get left out there. That was a sad part of that. I mean, they were real hardworking. You watch 4-year-old kids at Kool-Aid stands making change. Brilliant. I mean, the minds of what youth can do and guarding a shop and the language and it was amazing. Amazing people.
Did you have some of those kids like take care of your clothes and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah, we had one young kid, and we tried to teach him English and give him books, and so yeah, you had people that did the laundry and clean places. But you try to help them. People try to help, and you watch guys fall in love with girls, and at least while they're there, and many take people home that
Right.
came home. So
Yeah.
there's a great loneliness. There was a dilemma then that's fascinating to study versus now is you would get a letter from your wife and it would have something negative in it that she'd leave out, like I bought a new house or I bought a car or something, and she'd say it was $1,000 or $100,000, and that would take about 8 days to get to you, and then you'd write a letter of response. And she'd get a nasty letter back, and 8 days later she gets it. In the meantime, she'd write and say, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that my dad gave me the car." and I mean, that's a simple thing, but this has just gone on with this thing. And it got so, to this day, I'm excited when the mail comes, and it just drives me nuts. My secretary doesn't bring it right in, because the importance of getting mail and touch from home. I try to preach that to people all the time. Write them, email them, do whatever. It's just so important. And you get people. I have a lot of sisters, and so we'd have guys that get nothing, and I'd try to talk my sisters into, and they don't really understand, but sometimes they do it, and it just meant so much to these people. So, it's like being a prisoner here, and if you're in prison, you just want contact from the outside. So,
Yeah.
it was.
And you said you had 2 brothers that went to Vietnam also?
I had one brother went to Vietnam, another never got there, but they both got drafted before I joined.
And who the brother that got to Vietnam, what did he do, and who was that?
It was my brother Jim, who's gone on. He's kind of semi-retired now. He's very successful in real estate, and he had a twin brother, and he was in the Army as well. And I didn't really follow what he did. I think he was in supply though, mostly. He was not an infantryman or anything.
So, did you get to Japan at all when you were over there?
I only flew through Japan at one time and never went to Thailand. Got my R&R in Hawaii and the Royal Hawaiian, and
Yeah.
can remember that vividly.
Yeah.
And
But you didn't come home for a whole 12 months?
no, other than going to Hawaii for
That's
5 or 6 days.
Did your wife get to come
To Hawaii, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the R&R thing was kind of a mixed. I guess the break, you just remember the short-term calendars and the countdowns, and as a kid you counted down Christmas and your birthday and getting out of school, and then that gets translated to getting out of the service. And I know when I was there, I had mixed feelings about. We had so many debates. I was with the physicians I was with in the 173rd Airborne even, where I would say on the tendency to pacifist. Yet there they were there in the war and in an airborne group, and I had mixed feelings about the war. I went over with mixed feelings and came back with mixed feelings, and because you want to win, and you could tell they weren't winning. We didn't go all out, you know. It's like we weren't going to go to their house and fight them. We would fight them, and they let them come to us, and so that was a bad, kind of a bad happening. That was tough, and I think, but I watched young kids time and time again. You watch a young man maybe from the South. He hadn't been around many black people, and didn't really think he's prejudiced, but you know, if you ever said to his sister, he would never do that. Gets thrown into basic training, and darn if he's not elbow to elbow with them black kid, and they just become blood brothers. They're bonded under the stress of boot camp, and you know, the tough medical training, and the competitiveness and everything. And pretty soon they're best friends, and they're on their way to Vietnam. And then there are a couple of weeks, and one of them, you know, steps on a punji steak or gets a leg blown off. And they had no idea where they're going there. They don't read the paper about politics and stuff. They're 17, 18 years old. And all of a sudden, the hatred, the cruelty, the vicious enemy that's out there that did that to their friend. And then you see that kid with earrings and fingers, you know, ears around his neck and fingers, and almost doing atrocities. You know, they were just a killer. There was one kid I remember. I took a special weapons training and explosives course coming from, and he was a ranger. Couldn't have been over 19, red hair, freckle faced kid. And he was like, kill the gooks, kill, you know, kill. And never forget, and about 2 years after I was out of the Army, I was in a bar and dance place in Manhattan Beach, and there he is out dancing with peace, big peace symbols on his chest and stuff, you know. He'd just gone 100, he was gone the other way and stuff, but the minds are just so sensitive at that age. I mean, they all at every age, I guess, but they're right, you know, they're going from youth to adult, and machoism and self-doubt, and there was nothing sure over there, you know. I mean, for the infantry, the sad part was like when, I can't remember, were there 500,000 over there at one time?
Probably.
I think there was like 500,000. I bet there was only 30 or 40,000 fighting. You know, everybody's in supply and typing and officers, and I read a recent really great book written by a helicopter pilot over there that someone gave me, and it told how he wanted to get his pilot's license, so he thought he'd join the Army, and then he happened to raise his hand when helicopter school came up. And we went through helicopter training. The helicopters the Hueys are supposed to train on, got sent to Washington, D.C. for an exhibition, so he kind of went through without ever getting to fly the helicopters. They were being sent to Vietnam. They landed, and two of the 5 guys or something flew into a mountain within the first week with a whole load of crew on them. And he goes on and he flew a Huey, you know, he'd drop troops in, be shot at, drove him nuts. So after 6 months, he started writing letters that he wanted to transfer. And he kind of lied and said he was a gunship pilot. So they said, yeah, we need one down here in on K or someplace like that. So then the second 6 months he flies the fighter ships where he's on the attack. And he relates that, and then he goes on in life. He has a rating in the book of the odds of getting through Vietnam, and it's like the worst was a tunnel rat, the second was a medic pilot, and then a Huey helicopter pilot, and it went on to the odds of dying as a major or a light colonel were like better than, you know, anything else in life back in the United States, and he rates all these things. It's kind of interesting. And he goes on, it tells his life after the war and how it affected him. It's a great book.
Did you have any anger, or do you even now, about the way that the war was conducted, that we didn't really go all out?
Yeah, it was, you know, kind of the more mature you get, the more complex you realize everything is in life. And people say, well, we fought for the oil. The same story was there. We were fighting for Chevron oil. How important is that? Is that really true? I think people just get disjointed, and they're not, you know, it'd be like, I guess, the LA Lakers being coached from Washington, D.C. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it's really about. You got guys making all the decisions. They don't come to the games. They're not at the games. And they're sending guys that go out to LA and see what's happening out there. We don't get television reception here. And they, you know what I mean? It's crazy. And so we didn't have, we never understood, and we always underestimated the enemy. Always underestimated. I think what we've seen is we've built up to the most powerful. When you learn, and I see even these older airships you have out front, they're devastating. They're just overpowering, but they're worthless to go send to Iraq, or they're worthless because this little gorilla guy he just gets in close to us and we can't do anything about him. And God, we have jets that can shoot other planes out of the sky from 1,000 miles away. But you can't use that. They don't have jets, you know. So it's the human is just so powerful as an individual, and wow, it's like, wow, what do we do now? You know, let's take the money, let's buy them off or something. You know, we can pay for them to change religions. But
Yeah. Did you have any nightmares or things like that when you came back to civilian life?
I don't think of any consequence. I mean, I might have had a few. You remember having a beer with a guy and having him tell you how great his family is, and the next day he's on the table and he's got a leg coming off or something. So, but that happens in car accidents here, and you see that kind of thing. So, I don't think I had. You know, it didn't really answer your question. Did I have hatred for how they handled it? Probably if I'd have thought a lot more about it, it's kind of like the weather. You didn't have a whole lot of control of it, but that's not true. I mean, anybody can come back and be really vocal.
Did you experience any negativity from the civilian population back here when you came back home, or even before you went over? Because
when I came back, I'll never forget, because I left Cameron Bay in kind of, I don't know what we call it, dress khakis and stuff, short sleeve, 105 degrees. I landed in, I think, Anchorage, Alaska, and it was 25 below. It was so cold that you didn't feel it. And I never forget, I came in the airport, and the girls were all in high white boots, and the guys all had sideburns. So it was like the world had changed in 12 months. It just blew me away. And I thought no one was particularly proud of me. It was kind of a non-event. I wasn't in Berkeley, but then I got sent to, I was stationed in Sausalito. I lived in Sausalito and was stationed in San Francisco. So I had to walk by the hippie park there where all the thing was, and they didn't give me a really bad time. It wasn't too bad.
So when you got back, then how much longer did you stay in the service?
I was in a year. I got stationed to Fort Baker, Sausalito, got in Presidio, and I had nuclear biological warfare for the Western United States, and preventive medicine in that part of the United States and stuff.
So I can remember when I took my orientation going into the Navy as a dental officer. It would have been about that time, 60, would have been 64. This guy, he was an expert, I guess, on the nuclear biological, and he was really concerned about the biological warfare. He said that, that could just wipe. If you think nuclear is bad, the
Exactly.
biological is perhaps even worse.
Yeah, and you know how guys treated their gas masks, and even just, you go through gas training, and the fear of that, but then mustard gas and CS gas and the stuff that goes on, and you never want to put that, you think how hot it is in that mask to keep that thing on and how long you're going to last, and keeping it lubricated and keeping the seals and the valves and packaged right,
I mean, to me, it's a wonder that terrorists haven't unleashed some horrible disease on the
Yeah, we look how
population.
simple the anthrax was and everything else. Yeah, I almost have a fear that the problem is we have nowhere to retaliate, really, unless we take out a whole country. You know what I mean? Do we wipe out the Iran? Do you go to what do we do, when this happens? Because what you got to worry about is you look at history and the brutality of man, and each country's been the dominant. Portugal, Spain, France, England, Russia, the Vikings were dominant. Genghis Khan and the brutality and what people are capable of. I just saw the new Mel Gibson movie, Apocalypto, I think it is.
Yeah, I've been wanting to see it.
It's a guy's film, but I think it's a great film with a great message about a part of life that never has always been a little confusing. It made you understand, but I think it's done. It's a guy's film. It's very bloody and stuff, but it's very human, very understanding how things happen. It starts out with a clip that great countries don't fall from outside sources; they fail from within first. You know, it starts out with some kind of saying like that.
Yeah.
And he goes on. So I think we need some really smart minds to figure out how we're going to either protect ourselves, or are we going to become total isolationists and shipping everybody from who speaks Arabic back to their country. It's almost seems like that's what it ought to be. It seems like they ought to put a line in the sand. Sunnis, you got 6 months to go over there, and Shiites, you got that, and the Kurds, you go there, and you know that's it. Or I think it's so hard to understand the people and the passion and the religions aren't that far apart, and yet they're just killing each other. You know.
Yeah. But it's being fueled, I think, by Iran. You know, the hatred or whatever, probably making it.
With money,
with money and weapons.
Well, they don't
and
need much.
And they're sending. I mean, I think they're sponsoring most of the fighters in there now, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But he's a scary leader.
Oh yeah.
And I know a lot of Iranian people, and they say that when the journalists visit Iran, they say they're the most United States-like people they visit all over the world. They're intelligent. They want the same things out of life. They want their families, but they get a despot, just a really tough individual, and it's a fear factor.
The Shah, I think, had really westernized that country.
Yeah.
He went down.
And he wasn't perfect, that's for sure.
No, but better than what they have now.
Yeah, I had an uncle. My dad's oldest brother was in the Foreign Service Department. It was at E2, and he was. And those days, I think everybody was involved. As you were secretary, you were CIA, you were everything. And he was in Iran right at the finish of the Shah's duty, and he was sent to the Philippines to oversee Vietnam. Remember when he was 55, he came through town. He had to go through jump school so he could oversee the airborne troops too. And he was in Pakistan, the communist uprising, and he opened like 40 embassies in Africa. And fascinating, but the world just keeps changing and adjusting.
But when you were in that nuclear biological, were you devising ways to combat?
Well, our job was we weren't handling the pure medical aspect of it. It was administratively organizing and setting up aid stations and distribution and communication, reacting to manage situations and controls. Right. The closest thing I ever got and was remember the Dugway Proving Grounds? All the sheep died out in Dugway Proving Ground. All of a sudden, like 200 sheep were like dead in a rock.
Where was that?
Utah.
Okay.
And so they says, get on a plane and get there right away. I arrived, and the MP escorted me to a hotel room and told me to stay there for 3 weeks and then go home. Yeah, I never learned.
Because it was so secretive, you think?
I'm sure it was a nerve agent or something that got loose, and I don't think they did it on purpose. I just think something bad happened, and it was a hush-up deal.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. I'm going to change tape. Okay. So you spent about another year after you got back from Vietnam in the Army?
Yeah.
And then what did you do?
I was trying to plan my career, and whether I knew I didn't want to be
was Tyler born yet?
No.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to be an engineer, and I did a little research. I thought I was kind of a salesman type, and I thought I could combine that with engineering, and so I kind of thought water was the most important element in the world. So I did some research, and there was a company called Aquachem, which I think even today is like one of the largest makers of desalinization plants. Mm-hmm. So I thought I would make a great international salesman. I thought the water, the need for water would go skyrocketing, and that I'd become an international marketing guy for Aquachem to sell these big desalinization plants. So I started communicating with him, and I was supposed to go for an interview, and I got a letter from a friend of my dad's who said, "You really belong in real estate with your background, and I have this company. You'd be kind of my prodigy son, and come back to LA." So I did that, and still got that letter, and went to work for him for about 5 months and got a whole bunch of assignments. I managed ultra high-end jewelry stores on Rodeo Drive, not a bunch of it, in a building, and 2 or 3 retail and stuff. I managed a big office building in downtown LA, 2 or 3 apartments in Hollywood. He gave me an assortment of stuff to kind of get my feet wet.
What was the name of his company?
William Walters Company. And he was a USC guy and belonged to LA Country Club and was second generation. And he was the president of the Institute of Real Estate Management, which was the highest honor a property management guy could have in the country. So he was very well respected in the early 70s. And he told me, you know, I wanted to be everything, make money, do all kinds of stuff. And so he told me to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, and every Thursday or whatever day of the week it was, they came out with the real estate investment opportunities. He says there's lots of money to buy good deals. The key is to find good deals. If you find good deals, we'll put deals together, keep part of the deal, and we'll go on and on and on. So I would look up a deal, and I would send away for it, and I'd get it, and I'd analyze it, and I'd tell him what I thought, and then he'd tell me the real facts of life, because he just had all this knowledge. So I learned so much, you know, and every so we find a good deal, we start chasing it. And he came back one time from Texas, and he'd spoken to a big group, and the president of Texas Instruments came up to him and said, Bill, he said, I like what I hear. He says, we'd like to get a regional office in by the LA airport. Our goal is 20 minutes to the airport, 20 minutes to executive housing, you know, 30 minutes to employee housing, and we need a high-rise office and a warehouse. And so he came back to me. He says, I got a job for you. He says, go find this spot. You're not going to find it in the paper. You're not going to find it by making phone calls. Every day we were in Hollywood, every day you drive back to Playa del Rey to the beach, go home a different way, and you'll find this property. So I ended up finding a property, couldn't find out who owned it, had dinner with my dad. He said, I know who owns that property. He introduced me to the treasurer of this big defense plant guy, and he said, yeah, we're about to sell that. Put it in escrow. Then he asked us to help design it. He wanted me to develop it for him. And I'm going, I'm 3 months out of the Army, and I'm about to get rich. You know, this is just too easy. Have I found my thing? And about a month later, and the guys came out, and they liked everything we showed them. And a month later, my Wall Street Journal, I go, it's this, has a big longhorn. It says, Texas Instrument pulls in its horns. No more regional expansion for 2 years. Board of directors meets. And that was the end of it. So I went in, I never forgot. He always said to me, it takes 20 sure things for one deal to go through. So keep a lot of deals in the irons, analyze them, whether they got logic, and that's going to be, you're going to have a lot more disappointments like this, you know, that are sure things. And then we formed in the early 70s, everybody was starting to build garden apartment complexes, larger 200, 300, 400 unit, which hadn't been done before. And they did it for two reasons. A, there was a need, and B, they made great tax deals out of them for investors. Accelerated depreciation, and it was just a terrific deal. So everybody who's anybody starts building apartments all over the Southwest and other places, but there was no expertise in managing them at the time. It was kind of the low end of real estate was to kind of be industrial and manage apartments and stuff. So they all came after this guy to buy his company out, Larwin and all the big public companies. And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to form a new company. I'll make Ted the president. We're going to hire all young college guys, and he's going to run it. And that's what we'll do. So a company picked us up on that, and we own 49%, and they own 51% of the big corporation. And we started this company, and it was kind of neat because it was in Century City. I had a corner office with antique clocks and decks. I'm 29 years old, and 12 years before, I was a drywall carpenter in the first high-rise there, drywalling the floors while I was in college, you know, working myself through college. So that was kind of neat, and this company was, they only allowed you to fly first class. If you rented a car, you rented a Lincoln or a Cadillac, and it was 3 floors of parquet floors and incredible offices and stuff. But after a year, they started telling him how to do his job, you know, classic corporate, you know, this is how you ought to be doing it and that. But I opened up like a 200-unit apartment house like every week somewhere in Southern California and Arizona. And I was pretty innovative. I opened up like condos. I had hostesses. I had scale models. No one else had that. I instead of brochures, I would get a 22-ounce brandy sniffer and ask it etch the logo into the thing. And when they walk in the door, you'd give them a Coke, a coffee, or a glass of wine, which they had 12 ounces. It took them forever to finish, so you had them captive. And so I got a lot of press out of that and stuff. But after 2 years, he says, Ted, I don't need this. You know, let's have them buy us out. So I got bought out for lettered stock. I had like in 1971 or something. I had like $250,000 in lettered stock. Yeah, I'm out of the Army 6 months, 8 months. No, it was a year I was out. And but lettered stock, you got to hold it for a year, and then whatever the value is. So it went from $5 a share to basically to zero, and then there was a lawsuit. So it was a great learning experience. And then he offered to set me up as a condominium developer. He said he'd invest $250,000 to kick me off. And I'd been living now. I had gone up to Northern California in Marin County and Sausalito, which was really cool living. and he wanted me to come back to Hollywood and work in Hollywood. And I said, well, if you move out of Hollywood or let me open an office on the beach, I'll do it. He says, I won't do it. And I said, well, I'm not coming. And we haven't had too much contact since then. It's probably too bad because he's done real well. And so I looked at a couple opportunities. I actually was going to, if I'm getting too far off track of this interview.
No, not at all.
Basically, I came up with a business plan. I had about 8 months worth of cash saved up that I could live on. And I was living up in Larkspur, California, Marin County. And I came up with a business plan. I said, I love the ocean. I like this development real estate thing. So I'm going to be the #1 developer on the coast of the Pacific Ocean, from Oregon to Mexico. If it doesn't touch the ocean, I'm not going to touch it. Houses, apartments, restaurants, I'm going to be the guy. I think it was a really sound business plan at the time. And within 4 months, I put together 2 major deals, one in Santa Cruz with the mayor of the town and the Castagnola restaurants and the Brown family, or the big bulb family up there, all the flowers, to do a high-rise condo in their new boat harbor, or their new yacht marina or boat marina. And then I had a deal to convert a hotel in San Diego into a condominium. And there were no contingencies. The people liked me so much they wanted me to develop both sides. Not only I was the broker. So again, I'm off and running with no the only contingencies was that Proposition 20 didn't pass, which was the Coastal Commission proposition. It was one of those sleeper deals, and it passed, and it shut down everything. And that ended my business plan and my deals. So I went to Lake Tahoe and started a resort marketing company, and sold out 2 or 3 projects. I was there a couple of years and got involved with a company out of.
Were you in Klein Village, that area?
I was in North Tahoe City.
Tahoe City.
And after about a year, and I was doing fine, and you know, I had a lot of athletic peers, but not many mentally stimulating peers. And most of my athletic friends kind of were too much dope and drinking when they weren't skiing, or being carpenters. It was a great place to raise a kid because they had so many sports. They had sailing lessons, skiing lessons, football, baseball. The kids were really got the benefit of living there. Anyway,
was Tyler?
Tyler was a small child then, yeah. And then a company called Mainline Properties came to Lake Tahoe to develop Squaw Valley into the premier ski resort in the world and the U.S. Olympic summer and winter Olympic training site. They had big visions. And they had kind of unlimited capital. I don't know what their source was. So they proceeded to buy up all the squaw. I watched them for a while, told them they didn't have the right beach. They wouldn't. They're 6 miles. The squaw's 6 miles from the beach, from Lake Tahoe. So I found a piece of property they should buy, and they bought it and put that in escrow. And I continued to kind of meet with them. Then I read in the paper they're going to have like 2,500 people building in it and 3,000 running it when they got done. And there's no housing up there. There's no extra housing. So I told them they had a problem. I said, what should we do? I said, you should tie up all the R3 real estate, buy the apartments, everything you can. They said, go do it, be quiet, Put another $5-8 million in escrow. Now I'm kind of invited to their parties a little bit. And pretty soon they approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in being the project manager for the whole thing, because I was 29 or 30 then, and it was a 10, 15-year project. And they were talking about flying me to Australia to meet the board and everything. And go home one day, Wall Street Journal says, Bank of New Zealand takes over Mainline Properties, prime rate of 22.5% the last year in Australia, takes the company under. And then I got a call saying that was all a bunch of BS, and 3 days later it was all over. And with that, I moved here to the desert. Okay. And I've been offered a job for 3 years with Bob Lowe, who I'd work with, my current guy who's my boss. I'd work with him right out of the Army in that property management. He was building and developing the apartments, and I was managing them. So he was building this company up, and I came back and joined him in '74, and I've made this my main home since then.
Had you been to the desert prior to that?
Spring breaks, Riviera Hotel, come out to the old Shadow Mountain Club, play a little volleyball for weddings and events and stuff. I really didn't play tennis ever then until later. Yeah. And so I kind of knew the desert. And my dad, Lawrence Welk, always had a home out here, and we got to come out once in a while and stay there with my dad when my dad was Lawrence Welk thing. Yeah. So I liked it, and they kept Boston, to come out, so I did do that.
Cathedral Canyon, where they used to call it Lawrence Welk. Is that where he used to live, in that area?
No, he never lived there. He lived over behind the El Mirador Hotel. He had a really nice home, and then he eventually ended up at Indian Wells Country Club. He belonged to Indian Wells Country Club.
Okay, so when you came here, where did you live when you first came here?
I lived in Palm Desert near the Shadow Mountain Resort and Racquet Club.
And what was your first job,
I was
project or whatever you were doing?
the Shadow Mountain Resort and Rack Club. Became the general manager, the real estate developer, the real estate broker, food and beverage marketing,
Now,
kind of everything.
Shadow Mountain had been there for...
Shadow Mountain had been there since 1946. You never seen the historical? I did a historical film on the Palm Desert and the Shadow Mountain Club.
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh,
I'd
yeah,
love to
it's-
see that. Yeah.
I got Cliff Henderson's old 16 millimeter films
Yeah?
from the 40s in
Yeah.
color.
Oh, I love that. I'd love a copy for the museum here.
Well, just keep reminding me. I'll get you one.
Okay, great.
And I think they're VHS and stuff.
Well, that's fine. I can put them on DVD. Or
Yeah,
either way.
and so I became his friend when he was like 81, and I was just starting to play tennis then, and I used to hit tennis balls with him when he was like 80 and 81. I said, "You got to give me those films. I got to do something with them." "Oh, no." So he finally called me one day, and he says, "I'll let you use my films." So I took them and I watched them, and then I kind of edited them, and I put together a historical film. I wrote copy for it, and I went out and got updated films. So he'd like have, first of all, he had like the first shovel full of dirt came out of the old Shadow Mountain pool, and he had Edgar Bergen and Candace Bergen and all these dignitaries flying in on these old planes, and he had Arabian horse races, he had car races, he had boat races. He had an amazing, he built the Pan Pacific, so he's a real promoter. And so I put that film together, and that was really fun. But it's like, it shows like El Paseo, and it was a dirt road, and it's got signs that says your dress shop here, your bank here, your drugstore here, and then I'd flash into the new stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I gave it to the city of Palm Desert with a goal of mine that they would update it each year with each new project, kind of, and then they just they gave it to the Historical Society, and it kind of went dead. But you'd get a kick out of it.
I'd love to.
Yeah,
Oh,
you would.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
got old tennis pictures of Segura playing and Gonzalez, and
Oh, that's
And,
great.
I
Yeah,
think-
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I've been finding little gems like that around here in Palm Springs, but I
Oh,
don't have
great.
anything really down
Yeah.
that way. That would be great. Yeah.
so anyway, I started Shadow Mountain, and then I ran that for a few years, and we brought in a
Was
general
Vic
manager.
Braden there when you were there?
Vic I was told he was there, and I was inheriting him, and I think a week before I took the job, he quit. He never liked the desert that much,
Yeah.
and he went down to Costa de Caza,
Right.
and so we hired Billie Jean King, Tennis America, to take his place, and within a week of signing that deal, she went belly up, went bankrupt, and so we ended up putting in old Don Allen and Sally Allen, the mom and pop, a program to the thing. As a small world, I was there today looking at tennis courts, deciding whether to redo a couple of asphalt courts.
Really?
Yeah, I was walking there with a tennis road just 2 hours ago.
No kidding.
Small world, yeah.
Yeah, really. So, so how long did you stay there with the Shadow Mountain?
Well, I worked out of there as my office after, I think I was like 3 or 4 years developing and contracting, and maybe even a little longer. And then I stayed there as my office, and I was involved in a project in Lake Tahoe that Chase Manhattan Bank was involved in, and so they found me and went back up and did a joint venture with Lowe to turn around a big project up there called Grandlebachen Ski and Racket Resort. It's the old Cal Alumni Center. And
Give me a little background on Lowe. What was his name again?
Bob Lowe is the chairman. Bob Lowe started his company in 1972. Bob was a Claremont graduate, eventually became the president of Claremont. He just into that tour, Is he chairman or the president of a private school like that?
I don't know.
Anyway, he was the head guy.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing as
Chancellor
a side job.
Yeah.
And he got his MBA from Stanford, and he's been like Entrepreneur of the Year there a couple times, or once anyway. And then, so he broke off from this shareholders group that we both were developing apartments for, and formed his own company. Asked me to come with him in the beginning, but I was off and doing my own thing. And so 74 I joined him, and I've been with him longer than anybody at this time. It's now a major company. We maybe have $4 billion under construction, and we probably manage $2 to $3, $4 billion worth of property. About 8,000 to 9,000 employees. We're the third or fourth biggest independent hotel manager in the country. We're one of the bigger pension funded investors and advisors. We managed the Transamerica building in San Francisco. We did have the Hotel Del Coronado for many, many years, and did all the remodeling and rejuvenation there.
KSL has that now?
We had sold that. Yeah, we sold that to them. And so it's a very diverse company. We're not a stick builder, but we're a major community builder. We got a 6,000 acre community up in Seattle. We run the Sun River Resort in Oregon, one of the, probably the finest family resort in Pacific Northwest. We have a project like that called Wild Dunes in South Carolina on the ocean with a couple Fazio courses. We developed another community in Florida called Ocean Hammock and Hammock Dunes. We were running the Algonquin for a while. I think we're still involved in that. In New York, we had the Nine in Boston. At the Ritz-Carlton in Pasadena for a while. And then we're redoing the village of Stowe, Vermont with a condo hotel and for AIG back east. We just took over Squaw Valley Inn in Squaw Valley, a 300 or 400 room hotel. We converted condos and had a wonderful, successful launch, about 130 million the first 2 hours in San Francisco. And so we're doing like 5 condo hotel projects around the country on the East Coast. And then we're doing a big new 400 room hotel on the ocean at the old Marineland site, and 100 condo hotel units that start at like $2 million a piece down there. So that's a major thing with all the inherent problems that come with a project like that, cost of commission included. And so it's been a very diverse company. We do resort development. We do, I did the town center, shopping center over here, put together the Saks Fifth Avenue deal in El Paseo, did the terraces of the Vintage Club, the Reserve Country Club, Stone Eagle now. We just signed the deal. Permit deal was to do Silver Rock. We'll do 1,000 hotel rooms and condominiums in La Quinta at the Silver Rock project. Oh. And you don't know about that?
I didn't know about
Yeah.
that. No. What is that, a golf course?
Silver Rock is the Palmer golf course they built for the Hope Classic. They got in dispute
yeah.
over.
Oh, yeah.
So they really rejuvenated it pretty nice. It's a pretty fun course. It's 7,600 yards, I think, from the back tees.
Yeah.
And we have control of all the real estate within the project. So they'll do 36 holes of golf with no housing on it, and the best site left in the whole valley if you go see it. It's just unbelievable. Yeah. And so we have a phased takeout, buy down of the project and development program. So that's really fun. Doing hotels is kind of cool, and they'll be high-end 4-star stuff.
And your job is to kind of put deals together, or what?
Most things I find from scratch, or come up with an idea or a concept, or somebody talks to me about a piece of vacant land. And then I'm a little different developer, and then I kind of do things all the way through. I find it, I conceive it, I hire the consultants, I help get it financed, I build it, I sell it, I manage it. It seems like I never quite get away. I mean, they're on the board of directors, or they've hired me to stay on and manage it and stuff. So I get a lot of time to work out the details and stuff. And
do you have people that have been with you for a long time?
yeah, probably the longest is 12 or 15 years. Yeah. These people, this run of people.
Do you think that when you were in the service and you had to basically manage people under you, has helped you in private knowing? I mean, did you learn anything how to manage people?
Well, you learn from being managed by people incorrectly, and oftentimes the military is a very frustrating situation because usually seniority is what rules, and so you're put under people that wouldn't in public life, and there's a reason for that. In the service, they no way they could be adjusting and bring a new guy in and stuff, so you kind of understand it. But it's pretty hard to take. So you learn from that, and I learned from my mistakes, naivety and I think at the Harvard Business School they teach that people don't do what you expect them to do, they do what you inspect them for. and unfortunately that's true, but I think leadership is just like being a parent. You have to like what you're doing, you got to lead by example, and you can't tell people very much. Almost anything, no one listens and wants to be told what to do, and so. But if they see something they like in front of them, how you're achieving and what you're accomplishing, I think that's the main thing. So you want to be respected, so they don't want to lose your respect, and then I really think that's true. I remember my parents were the best parents anybody could have, but there were times as a 16, 17-year-old when they told me I couldn't go to an all-night beach party or something that I just couldn't believe they could ever questioned me, and I was ready to give them up. And so you just need, you need luck raising kids, and you need luck with employees, because I think what very few people realize is when you have an employee, you have their wife, you have their children, you have their in-laws, you have their friends. It's all part of what you got. And if you aren't ready to take that on, now some guys are pretty good about saying, leave your family at home. This is your job, and they don't do that. But I think the good guys take it all in and make the adjustments. And the guy I work with, Bob Lowe, I think he does that as good as anybody, because in every family, even the great families, there's drug problems, there's mental retardation, there's just crime, there's stuff goes on, and you just gotta get up every day knowing that 20% of what you're gonna do is not gonna be fun, you know,
Yeah, no,
and attack it like everything else.
Even a small office like I have, just a few people, but you're really a family, and
Yeah.
you always know what's going on with them. And
More than you want to know, mostly.
Right. Do you do much traveling, or have you had to do much traveling in your?
I haven't had to do a great deal of traveling like a lot of my partners do. I mean, I don't. Mostly my traveling's trying to spend time with my family in Sun Valley or Arizona or my ranch in Idaho or something.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of traveling, trying to get away every other week or something, and driving to Arizona but I've never had to travel too much.
When did you first start playing tennis?
1975 when I came to Shadow Mountain. When did we meet? Like 1980 or something?
Yeah.
Probably I think you were my first dentist, so I probably.
I think so. Yeah, I think
about
that time. I think,
yeah, I was just starting then, and
right.
had great, got to play with the pros and stuff then, so
Yeah.
got good, and then had a few friends like yourself, and we had some fun matches. You remember Dick Kentz? Did you ever play with him?
Dick who?
Dick Kentz. He's an attorney. Went to Cal.
I can't remember. I'm not really.
He used to
sure.
come out and play at Shadow Mountain all the time, and
I know Brian and I played with you and Tony a few times.
Yeah,
That was always
yeah.
fun. Yeah.
and he reminded me a little of you. I always thought you were really consistent, and it was like if I played really good, I thought I could beat you, but if I played average, I got beat, and if I played bad, I get beat every time, and that's how I was with him.
Oh.
He was just, except he drove me nuts. He was just. Fix his glove every time before he'd serve, bounce the ball 8 times. The ball didn't bounce right, so he'd drive me on my mind. But he stayed a friend for a long time. In fact, he's the 2 attorneys are representing some people we're having not a dispute with, but a deal hasn't gone the way we all wanted, and we're just trying to work it out. Their attorneys are 2 of my best attorney friends, Paul Seltzer and Palm Springs, and this guy Kentz.
Yeah,
As a small world, how can that happen? Have 2 attorneys be your friend on the opposing side? So that's kind of neat.
I think you had some surgery on your knees.
I think tennis did that to me. I think taking tennis up late at night, not being somebody who's stretched, and I think I was I'm a kind of a rough athlete. I don't think I'm terribly graceful, but I'm falling down, slamming, diving. And I think that wore my knees down. Hardcore tennis is all that. What was I, 35 or 37 when I started or something. And I just think they just wore out on the inside. So my surgery's been good, and I've hit tennis balls a few times. It was really fun. I miss it.
Yeah.
Miss that one-on-one competition.
But you can still play golf.
Yeah, it hasn't hurt my golf at all.
Did you take up golf about the same time?
I didn't take up golf till I was about 40 when I joined the Vintage Club. Nice way to start. And I really have never gotten better since the beginning. I mean, I started with a 17 handicap and a slice that I could play to. And the minute I got that corrected, I was in trouble. So I'm kind of everyone says I can birdie every hole in every course, but not often enough. And I hit far enough that when I miss, I get so much trouble. So I'm kind of, put me in a 3 or 4 day tournament, and I'll be in the top 3 most of the time because I start getting the feel for it and the hand touch and stuff. But golf's not for me because my mind's just racing. I'm not focused.
I know we play, and you're good in a scramble too because you can.
Yeah, I can hit them and do. I just won a big scramble.
Did you?
Just won a charity deal.
Tell me about the places that you have now. You were talking about the ranch. Tell me, let's talk about the ranch. Your own home.
Yeah, we've had a series of homes here in the desert.
Well, I remember the one where you had the grass tennis court. I thought that was.
Yeah, that was. I should have kept that one. I'd like to go back and buy that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sunken grass tennis court, 75-foot lap pool, guest house, drive-through horse barn.
That was something.
God, that was sickening. Tried to sell it for 8 years. You know that? Sold it for nothing. Anyway, I really live right now in a fairly small contemporary home over in Silver Spur Ranch. I did live at the Reserve. I lived at the Vintage Club, and had some really nice homes there. And then we had a really beautiful home in Indian Wells. But basically, what we did is we said, let's go out and get a ranch as a second home. So we looked all over the Western United States. And
But now we're talking about Pam. Is Pam your second wife?
Yes.
And
Yeah, we've been married for 18 years.
18, have you really? 18 years.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Jeez. I can just remember when you first got married.
Maybe 17 years, yeah. 1989, got married.
And what's her background? Where did
Pam
she,
has a doctorate degree in psychology, and
is she a California girl? Where did she
she's, I think, maybe born in Kansas, but spent all her whole life out here in California and Marin County and San Fernando Valley, and kind of put herself through school and got a doctorate in clinical psychology. She's worked at that the last 5, 6, 7 years, I guess. She's been mostly remodeling homes and second homes. We've been doing big major stuff, and she has an incredible eye for detail, and I think her hero's kind of Ralph Lauren, and I think she could do all the same work he does. So she's really talented at it, and we have some incredible homes right now. So
Yeah.
most of my money's tied up in homes, but we have a great ranch in Idaho, almost 1,000 acres, and we keep about 80 to 100 head of cattle on it, and 300 acres of farming. We got all the big tractors and toys and ATVs, and right now about 4 horses there. The horses are actually my ranch managers, but we have a 10-stall barn, has a big home sitting on 4 acres of grass with a half-acre lake in the front yard. There's other duck ponds around the property, and then it's got a 3-bedroom guest house, a 3-bedroom ranch manager's house, a big tractor barn, the big 10-stall horse barn, and it's got a freestanding kind of saloon rec room out in the horse pastures and stuff. And I'm surrounded by 60,000 acres of BLM land for a horseback riding team, and I have grazing rights on that property. And then what's terrific is we have a young ranch manager, who's a Mormon kid, who was like state undefeated wrestling champ as a senior at about 140 pounds or something. He's also a sheriff reservist, so he packs a gun and a shortwave and keeps a police car on the property. And he's a licensed masseuse and a horse wrangler and can teach. So you can have, it's really cool for. And then I have a good friend I have one neighbor on the corner of my property who's been a cowboy all his life. He's got 1,600 acres. He just does cattle, and he's a terrific guy. And then another neighbor who'd be the closest next neighbor, and he's got 1,200 acres and he farms, but he comes over and takes care of my farming and cattle and everything. And he's got a degree in farming and a master's in business, and he works for a very reasonable rate. He's a terrific guy, and so he's good. So it's like management free, and you want to be a cowboy, you can do it. So anyway, unfortunately, it's for sale now. We then bought a smaller home in Sun Valley, so my wife wouldn't get snowed in when she went shopping. The log home she fixed up, and then we sold that one, and we have a really big log home now we just finished that's like 3 stories on 5 acres. I have the biggest lawn, I think, in Sun Valley. At least the mowers tell us that. It's 4 acres of lawn to mow, and then the river's on 3 sides of us, and this wonderful old rustic log house that's currently decorated to the hilt for Christmas with, I think, 4 Christmas trees, and beyond belief. And then we have a really big villa, European-like villa in Scottsdale on like 3 acres. It's like 8,000 feet, 9 bedrooms, everything you need for 2 people. And it's just spectacular. Used to be Stevie Nicks' house. So we just finished all those, and Pam, if you're watching this, she has her eye now on a 28-acre ranch up the street from our Sun Valley house, and she's also got her eye on a house Arnold Schwarzenegger just sold a year or 2 ago that's a big European chalet north of Ketchum up there. 10 bedrooms or something. So she's off to the races again. So I got to go, when I land, I get to go look at those 2 places. But anyway.
So for other than well, you can't play tennis. You play a little golf. Anything else?
I
Any
hit
other
tennis,
hobby,
and if I could drop 20, 30 pounds, I'd go back and play tennis again. I'd
you
try
should
it.
come over.
And I'd start skiing.
Did you?
But I did go out and hit on a ball machine for about 2 hours, and man, I just enjoyed the heck out of
I
it.
tell you, I play on grass. Have ever since we built the grass courts at Mission Hills the
Mm.
last 7 or 8 years, and I mean, you can dive for balls, just like you're talking about, and not get hurt, and my knees feel fine.
Really?
You know, and so
What
we
about
should come-
stretching and slipping?
No. I got some shoes that have like little nubbies on.
Hmm.
And yeah, you'll slip if you don't, because.
Mhm.
But with these, I never, and you can, I can show you, or I can tell you where to get them, and you can get them because. So I never have a problem with that. So
Oh,
I've been
that's great.
playing a couple times a week, singles all the time, and so
Oh, great.
it's fine. We should come over and just bat it around if nothing else.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
I got a couple clay courts at the reserve, and
yeah. And then we got clay over there. Clay's okay, but I really love the grass. It's like playing on a golf course, It's
I think to like clay, you just started on it.
oh, did you just start on it?
No, I think to
Oh.
like it, you have to have started
Oh,
as a clay
cliff
player.
started, yeah.
Because to go to it, it's just so unpredictable and weird and slow. And
Slow, I know, yeah.
I remember my first clay event was being called up by Leoncio. Remember Leoncio? Colas, the little Peruvian tennis pro.
Oh, yeah,
So he was supposed to. There was all the pros were having a clay court tournament down at Bermuda Dunes, and I don't know what happened. He hurt his leg or something. And he says, "I can't just pull out. Go take my place." And I played the guy that owns the LA sports thing, Rob. And he was like Western States clay court champion in college.
Oh.
The first game was 6. I caught hang on about the end of the second set, but it was it was just unbelievable the difference. And Rob, God, I see him around town.
Wheatley?
Rob Wheatley.
Yeah.
That was my match. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. Ted, if you had any advice for a young person that might be going into the service and maybe going over in harm's way, what would you tell them?
Great question. I just sent a young civilian over who's CSI back for his second trip, and I see I see the conflict happens from writing home and saying something smart and upsetting his mother, and he's upset because I think things are going bad, and I see that kind of thing. So I think you got to remember how sensitive. There are so many people that care, and you're in harm's way. I just get your act in order and stay organized and avoid the booze and drugs. That's a no-win deal. And boy,
Do you think that...
get your head. It's so different. I mean, if a guy's going to be a supply sergeant in
Well, sure.
Saudi Arabia, it's a different animal.
Yeah,
But
right.
these guys out on the streets and in the Humvees and stuff, that's. I think just get your act in order. It's almost like if you or I were dying and knew we had a year, you got to get your will together.
I've seen a lot of, here we see a lot of, especially 29 Palms guys that have come back and come through, and I mean they're just great. They seem well educated. They seem like they've got their head screwed on. I think the all volunteer Army, if we can keep it that way, is probably the way to go. I mean, guys are there.
Tell that
because
to the
they
reservists over there. That's an all-volunteer army.
Well, yeah.
I don't. What do you think of that? Just to grab to me, if you're a reservist, you're here to defend this country in an emergency, not to be sent overseas to fight a war. That's a tough one.
Well, yeah, I guess, but yeah. Well,
I don't think anybody read that fine print.
It might not have, but yeah, but I mean, as far as the young guys that I see that join, and I've been real impressed with them, the ones that come through.
Yeah, we've had we get the superstars, the guest speakers that come to our seminars, and they've been wounded and they've started a whole new life and attack life, and those they're pretty awesome. And I see most of the interviewing over there. They do seem to be very well trained.
And they are.
And,
I think that's.
and they got the great
really
equipment,
Yeah.
but they got to be getting a mixed message from us right now, politically and.
Well, sure.
Um,
some people want to pull out, and it's a tough deal. I don't know what's gonna happen in this septum.
Yeah, I agree.
Hope for the best. Ted, thank you for your service to our country. Thanks
you.
for coming in and sharing with us, and thanks for being my friend all these years.
Yeah,
It's
thank
really
you.
been neat.
Enjoyed it. I was saying that when your memories exceed your dreams, you're a dead man walking. That's what you got to worry about.